These 5 lightweight Linux distros make Windows feel bloated. Hey everyone, welcome back. If your Windows machine feels sluggish, if updates take forever, or if you're staring at an older PC that still works but can barely keep up, you're not alone. A lot of people assume Linux is automatically faster than Windows. That's only half true. It depends entirely on the distribution you choose. Some Linux distros ship with the same heavy desktop environments and background services that make modern Windows feel bloated. Others are built from the ground up to stay lean. Today, I'm walking through 5 lightweight Linux distributions that run fast on modern hardware and can breathe new life into older machines. These are systems designed for efficiency, speed, and control. Let's get into them. Number 1, Tiny Core Linux. Minimalism taken seriously. Tiny Core Linux is one of the smallest full desktop Linux systems you can download. The standard graphical edition sits around 23-24 megabytes. There's an even smaller command line version under 20 megabytes. This isn't a stripped-down installer that later downloads gigabytes of packages. The image you download is essentially the entire working system. It is designed to load into RAM. Once it's running, the system feels extremely responsive because it's not constantly reading from a hard drive or SSD. You can add applications as extensions, and you get 3 main ways to handle them. Cloud mode, temporary, nothing persists after reboot. Mount mode, extensions stay on storage. And copy mode, frequently used apps load into RAM for maximum speed. Minimum requirements are surprisingly low. An old 486 processor and as little as 28 to 46 megabytes of RAM, depending on the edition. Recommended is a Pentium 2 class CPU and 128 megabytes of RAM. It still ships with a modern kernel and stays actively maintained. The desktop uses a lightweight window manager called FLWM. There's no bloat by design. You only add what you need. If you want the absolute lightest possible Linux desktop that still feels like a real operating system, Tiny Core is hard to beat. Number 2, Puppy Linux, designed to run entirely in memory. Puppy Linux takes a different approach. It is built around the idea of loading the entire system into RAM. Once it's up, everything feels snappy because disk access is minimal. Typical ISO sizes range from a few hundred megabytes up to around 1.5 gigabytes, depending on the variant, which is still very small by today's standards. One of Puppy's strengths is choice. You can pick versions based on Debian, Ubuntu, Slackware, or Void. That means you get access to different package ecosystems while keeping the same lightweight Puppy philosophy. It includes a useful set of applications out of the box: browser, office tools, media player, file manager, so it's usable immediately. Changes can be saved to a file on a hard drive or USB stick, or you can remaster the system. It was famous in the early days for letting people save sessions back to a CD-RW. Today, it works just as well from USB. Minimum RAM is around 256 to 512 megabytes, with 1 gigabyte feeling comfortable for everyday use. It remains one of the best options for older hardware that still has a decent amount of memory. Number 3, Gentoo. Build exactly what you need. Gentoo takes the opposite extreme of Tiny Core. Instead of shipping a tiny pre-built system, it gives you the tools to compile almost everything from source, optimized specifically for your machine. The name comes from a fast-swimming penguin, and the philosophy matches. Through use flags, you decide which features each package includes. Want a leaner Firefox or a desktop environment without unnecessary components? You can disable them at compile time. The result is software tailored to your hardware and your preferences. You can also install binary packages when you don't want to wait for long compiles. Gentoo has a steeper learning curve. You start with a base system and build outward. The payoff is a highly customized, efficient system with very little waste. It is popular among users who want maximum control and are willing to invest the time. Performance gains come from both the optimizations and the fact that you simply don't install features you will never use. Number 4, Arch Linux, rolling release with excellent documentation. Arch Linux sits between the extremes. It is a rolling release distribution that gives you a minimal base system and lets you build upward. Software comes as binaries, so you avoid the long compile times of Gentoo while still keeping a clean, modern system. You begin at the command line and install only what you need. The famous Arch Wiki is one of the best technical resources in the Linux world. So good that people who don't even run Arch still use it. Because you control every package, it is easy to keep the system lean. Pair it with a lightweight window manager or desktop environment, and it stays fast. Arch rewards users who are comfortable learning and maintaining their system. The community phrase, "I use Arch," by the way, exists for a reason. Once set up the way you want it, the system stays current and responsive without carrying years of accumulated, unused software. Number 5. Debian with a lightweight desktop. Rock solid and flexible. Debian is one of the oldest and most respected Linux distributions. The default desktop is GNOME, which is not lightweight. The good news is that Debian makes it easy to choose something lighter. Install Xfce, or another light environment such as LXQT or a simple window manager, and you get a stable, mature system that uses far fewer resources. On a fresh Debian install, you can select Xfce during setup, or later run a simple command to add it. Xfce feels familiar to people coming from traditional desktops, while staying efficient. Debian's stable branch prioritizes reliability. If you want newer software, you can move to testing or unstable, but many people stick with stable and simply add the lighter desktop. The combination of Debian's rock-solid base plus Xfce gives you a system that is both dependable and responsive. It works well on modern machines and still performs nicely on older hardware that has a few gigabytes of RAM. Now, finally, closing thoughts. The common thread across these 5 distributions is deliberate design. TinyCore and Puppy focus on extreme minimalism and RAM-based speed. Gentoo and Arch give you the tools to strip away everything you don't need. Debian, with Xfce, proves that even a mainstream, conservative distribution can become lightweight when you choose the right desktop environment. Modern Windows often feels heavy because it tries to be everything for everyone and keeps adding features, services, and background processes. These Linux options take the opposite approach. Start small, add only what is useful, and keep the system under your control. If you have an older machine collecting dust or a newer one that feels slower than it should, one of these distributions is worth testing. Most of them offer live images, so you can try them from a USB stick without touching your existing system. Which of these have you tried, or which one are you most curious about? Drop a comment below. If you found this useful, consider liking the video and subscribing for more practical Linux content. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.